Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's lecture. It is my pleasure to welcome Anastasia Christophilopoulou, who is with us tonight from Cambridge. She will deliver what she has been working on for the past 4 years with a team of colleagues and the disciplinary project being an islander. I will not talk about it because Anastasia will say everything about it, but I just wanted to alert you to the fact that one of the outcomes of the project was the production of a documentary, an award-winning documentary, which we will screen it tomorrow at the Linnehall Library at 4 o'clock. And after that, there will be a session for questions and answers with Anastasia. So please join us there as well. It will be a pleasure to see you all there as well. A few words I would like to say about Anastasia. Well, she completed her PhD in Cambridge in classical archaeology, in Iron Age architecture in the Aegean position, before returning again to Cambridge to work at Fitzwilliam Museum, at the Antiquities Department, at various positions. Now she's a senior associate at MacDonald Institute of Archaeology and at the Faculty of Classics, and a senior curator of Ancient Mediterranean at the Fitzwilliam Museum. And she's getting ready to move to her new position to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston as new chair of Ancient Greece and Rome. So it's an honor for us to have you here, what it means being an islander. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katerina. Thank you so much, Katerina. It is a real pleasure for me to be here tonight. Kind invitation. Ireland has been an island that has been on our mind for the duration of the project while we worked on this large project, which, as I'm hoping you are about to discover as well, deals mostly with various aspects of cultural identity. So for many reasons that I think will come up during this talk, we thought a lot of Ireland when we worked on the setting of Cyprus and other islands in the Mediterranean, not just on their ancient past and horizons, but also on what happens in terms of cultural identity in their modern historical past. So what I want to do today is to present the journey of an interdisciplinary project, which was called Being an Islander. We started working on this in 2019, and we are just about to formally close it, although we are really all committed to continue working together as a cluster of researchers because we found this experience extremely rewarding, and such an amazing network, at least we believe so, was formed out of this. So what the project was about, it was a combined research, public engagement, and last year in 2023, between February and June, at the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge. The entire project and its outputs, research, public engagement, the exhibition, the documentary that will be shown also tomorrow here, focused on tracing insular identities of the large islands of the Mediterranean. We selected these islands as they are notable for their size and for having borne witness to strong indigenous cultural traditions. They have demonstrated complex transitions between prehistoric to historic cultures and significant reconstructing of their social and political systems, tied in various ways to wider development. It was conceived in 2018 with research clusters encompassing insular and Mediterranean archaeology, but as well as social and visual anthropology, archaeological analysis, a large public engagement project in collaboration with the diasporic communities of Cyprus, Greece and Italy in the United Kingdom, and the inclusion. the exhibition Islanders, The Making of the Mediterranean, which was presented at the Fitzwilliam, and also an award-winning documentary. All the above outputs explored how insularity affected and shaped cultural identity using the examples of these three islands. With this, collaboration, we also aimed at and succeeded in a way to provide a platform to debate cultural evolution on the islands as opposed to the surrounding mainlands, to their surrounding mainlands, So issues of cultural interaction, hybridization, and migration were also central to the identity of these islands from early antiquity to the present day. And for this reason, I think for our research, we also applied an archaeological, ecological, and social anthropological lens to the surviving evidence. With the large exhibition and the documentary, we extended our discourse beyond the topic of the ancient Mediterranean, incorporating the current perceptions of the ancient Mediterranean, and the discourses about islands versus mainland cultural identities, for example, including Britain's own debated island identity. And this was a theme, again, that was discussed a lot during the formation of the project in the immediate effect of the review of our methodologies using the framework, under the framework of interdisciplinarity. I want to present some case studies from our research, public engagement, and exhibition experience, and question the value of a project such as Being an Islander in supporting the roles of museums today. I would also like to share some of our experiences with the public and devised and implemented with the direct involvement of various communities in the Mediterranean, as well as the diasporic and descendant counterparts in the United Kingdom and internationally. So, let us first consider the core ideas of the project. Throughout history, islands have been treated as distinct places. This is something that comes to mind also when one thinks of Ireland, unlike mainland and continental masses. But are islands inherently differently from mainlands? Historically, in the Mediterranean, some size in economic and political importance. Ancient Greeks, for example, considered Sicily a continent. Likewise, the large Mediterranean islands of Crete, Cyprus, and Sardinia were often given a special status due to their size, as they occupy an intermediate position between small island worlds, such as the Aegean island network and their surrounding mainlands. However, belonging to and being of an island has been romanticized and associated with otherness. Islands have often been deemed to have different histories from their mainland and have been associated with more isolated social, cultural, and economic episodes. Yet, connection is an important part of island life, since the sea can be a linking rather than a dividing body, motivating and maintaining informal and formal connections with other islands and the mainland. So one of our key objects in the Cambridge exhibition was this boat, a final Bronze Age in the transition to Iron Age model of a bronze boat from a site called Oroli in Sardinia, which gives us a unique example of the importance of seafaring, trade and communication. Another interesting object is this drawing of a dolphin, which was carved on a naturally curving rock, together with a short inscription in Greek from the Fitzwilliam Museum, which was originally, of course, found in Erimopolis in Crete and dated around 525. This object reveals the special bond islanders had with the sea, also heavily represented in Greek myth and art. Across our dynamic project team, we understand identity, art, and cultural expression in the islands as a dynamic interplay shaped by social and historical episodes rather than geography. Another interesting example is objects from the island's early history, such as this unusual figurine from the Chalcolithic site of Salamniou and Efani in Cyprus, representing two divinities joined to form a cross. shows the imaginative power of this active point to form a cross, shows the imaginative power of these active cultural choices. The same can be said for much later iconic objects such as the statue of Aphrodite Anadyomene, it means rising from the waters, a sculptural type showing the birth of the goddess from the sea, that had a long influence on ancient and later art and became the symbol of Cyprus's ancient connection to Aphrodite during the rise of the island's tourist industry in the 1960s. Being an islander can be a physical or identity, rather, island identities might have shifted depending on daily lives and experiences, as well as connections beyond their immediate surroundings. The Nuragic culture of Sardinia, for example, which lasted from around 1800, what is the Middle Bronze Age, 88 BC. During that time, communities in the Nuragic culture shared a distinctive type of architectural construction, megalithic stone towers called nuragi, such as the one you see here from Nuragi Serbisi. And archaeologists estimate that over 10,000 nuragic towers once existed throughout Sardinia, although now only a few thousand survive. Nuragi communities also shared common types of tomb architecture and cult places, as well as ceramic styles, agriculture and food processing equipment and housing objects. A great interaction among Nuragic communities, which probably also included trade, intermarriage and shared rituals. However, identity was a product of social choices, and Nuragic people would have constantly renegotiated their self-perception, their interactions with the Sardinian landscape and others within it. Ultimately, we regard identity as a form of social expression, one's sense of belonging to a group based on similarities and differences. Our project case studies and the material culture presented in this exhibition revealed that being an islander is a highly fluid state of being, whether consciously or not, both in the past and in the present. I want to very briefly show you. So these were the three large, areas of inquiry of the project. And they run through a number of our outputs and efforts. We wanted to redefine insular identity through the case studies that we studied in the Mediterranean. We wanted to understand the concept of mobility better in a very long diachronic perspective. For this reason, we formed 4 distinctive research clusters. One of them worked primarily on analytical science. It was called Forged in Metal, and it was a collaboration between the scientists, archaeological scientists, conservators and metal experts at the Fitzwilliam Museum and across the other one was working on a number of case studies investigating ancient food practices and food consumption, and this was a collaboration with a fantastic laboratory that does this work at the Cyprus Institute in Nicosia and our researchers based in Cambridge. A number of us worked on a third group called Mobility and Connectivity. We're working on mobility and connectivity, and these were people who each one had different angles of study. So I was looking more at material culture, remains and architecture. My PhD student at material culture, remains and architecture. My PhD student Rafael Lautaris, who finished actually his PhD themed around the project and also funded by the project, was working on objects coming from cult and tomb contexts in northern Cyprus, and rethinking the concept of identity of these early communities. Julia Muti worked on textile industries in the Bronze and the Iron Age in Cyprus with a perspective of understanding cultural identity, and several others did the same with different types of materials. And I think one of the most impressive areas of research was a project led by contemporary artists. One of the One of these people who did fantastic work was Yorgos Petru, practicing in the UK artist who works on the concept of insularity and contemporary art, particularly inspired or challenged by the theme of the division of his island in modern times, and he reflects about that, also thinking in terms of ancient. Nearly everyone. It includes a group of researchers from Cambridge, from the Cyprus Institute in Nicosia, in Cagliari, in Sardinia, various places across European universities, but of course also a very strong representation of people from the 3 departments of antiquities who contributed not just as lenders to the exhibition, but actually as people who shaped the research questions and the research outputs. So the Department of Antiquities in Cyprus, the departments and museums of antiquities in Sardinia, and the museums in Crete. And we're really grateful for their input. We had some fantastic press coverage throughout 4 months of the running of the exhibition, and we continue to have really good articles and interesting perspectives on the themes of the project and the exhibition long after the exhibition had finished, which was a first, was because, again, the people who advocated for the heritage of their islands, the active archaeologists, the researchers, but also the community representatives, became the spokespeople for the project. I'll come back to that when we talk about our public engagement, strategy, but we think this was a different angle from what large European museums usually follow when they create an exhibition, which is usually done by bringing up a list of very interesting and unique objects that are, represent the exhibition, and asking those as loans from the people who manage the local museums. We did the other way around. We went to them and we asked them, what really represents your island heritage? Can you tell us what really represents your identity in the ancient times, but also in the modern times? And we think this interaction actually changed dramatically the research questions, and this was one of the reasons why this project became popular. I want to very briefly talk to you about this was work that was carried across 4 years by 20 plus people. So it's really, the theme for another talk. So one of our main themes was to reframe mobility and migration as one of the defining characteristics of the ancient Mediterranean insular societies. While the intensity of mobility might have varied through time and space, and not all members of any particular community or island may have shared equally on it, mobility and the connectivity it engendered endowed the region of the Mediterranean with its characteristics. Contributors to the project the volume, the conference and other outputs debate and expand on the notions of mobility and connectivity with specific temporal and geographical case studies from the 3 islands, arguing that both mobility and connectivity are important features of island life, motivating and maintaining informal and formal connections, as well as elucidating the effect of these 2 phenomena in making some communities more resilient than others at specific times within their history. We also worked on the concept of migration. In the long run or a mainland perspective, the theme of migration in archaeology remains divisive and elusive. In fact, it remains divisive in other disciplines as well. Whether we examine it as a phenomenon in an organized and substantial way, or whether we observe it in its Brownian motion, borrowing the term from the study of population movements, it remains a crucial characteristic of both ancient and modern worlds. Today, migration is a defining issue, and documenting it requires huge amounts of quantitative and qualitative data, many of them needing to be interdisciplinary by nature. Recent evidence of large-scale migrations in the Mediterranean show that when these flows are undocumented, it is very hard to prove that they happened when the transition is over, as they leave very little material trace behind. Our contribution lies into bringing together both ancient and contemporary examples of migration, both in our research and the exhibition space. Both in our research and the exhibition space. We do so because we think that the incredibly rich Mediterranean island archaeological record under our study could benefit enormously from comparative approaches around insularity, connectivity and migration in a broader diachronic context, including analogies from contemporary waves of migration and other fields of scholarship. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the rest of the research clusters, but the one that worked on metallurgy was really interesting because it included a large pool of data from the collections of metal objects at the Fitzwilliam Museum, but also parallel studies of analysis of metal objects from Sardinia and Crete, and it provided a really good, ground for collaboration between researchers who work with similar research questions across all of these large departments. We conducted several types of inquiry, PXRF, analysis of analysis of provenance of copper, then copper alloys, as well as working on gold artifacts from different periods from these three islands. And we worked in what we call the chaîne opératoire of another metal products in the islands of the Mediterranean, with a focus, of course, on the Troodos, which became the area that provided with this prime metal many other areas of the Mediterranean. We connected archaeology with evidence we have from the natural environment and tried to understand the positioning of these communities in relation with the natural landscape and resources. We worked on the life cycle of production of metals, whether they were weapons or whether they were jewelry or other practical items, but as well as how these were disseminated within the Mediterranean, how they were sold, moved, traded as part of mobility phenomena as well, but also the life cycle within modern museums. How do they end up? Life cycle within modern museums. How do they end up in these collections? This opens another whole area of inquiry that includes, of course, issues of colonization and activity of foreign schools and researchers into lands where at the time where their heritage was actually people could advocate for themselves, as of course it happened for Cyprus during the period of the British presence in the island. This is a star object. I know it looks very rusty and ugly now, but it is an amazing weapon. It's a sword from one of the iron tombs of Tamassos. Tamassos was one of the early communities to be developed in the central area of the island and became later one of the 10 city kingdoms of the island of Cyprus. It was plated with gold, and it was studded with silver and with ivory, and also contained, of course, bronze and iron. And we X-rayed a lot of it. And we also did other analytical techniques on it, also the provenance of the metals that were involved in its construction. We also worked a lot on the areas of the built environment in these islands and understanding the geomorphology and resources of these islands influenced particular types of activity, particular ways of producing communities and architecture, and how does that relate with the heritage of these islands and their preservation today. This was a work that was conducted particularly in relation with the production of the documentary, and I'm not going to say too much about it because we will have the chance to see the documentary tomorrow and expand on these areas. The whole documentary was produced under the spectrum of visual anthropology, which is a specific sub-case of studies within documentary films and anthropology, in which strict narration, in terms of a didactic narration about ancient heritage or modern heritage, is replaced by a very conscious choice of images, and then the images become, in a way, the narrator of the important points of the film. This was really helpful in our case because we were trying to show within 16 minutes chronic presence and a number of aspects of cultural and insular identity of an island between 3000 BC and today. So obviously, if you follow the traditional way of narrating documentary films, you need many, many hours. But in this way, we achieved that better. From the various departments of antiquities at the exhibition, we worked with objects that had never been seen before outside their local museums, and in many cases objects that were never displayed as well in their regional museums. Recently excavated, so they were bringing up different questions and challenges in terms of how the perception of the islands and their identity had been shaped by previous scholarship, and this is where the contribution of the local archaeologists was most important. And as well, which was conducted side by side with the installation for the 4 months of the duration. We worked with children and various other community groups to explore a lot of these themes. Another area of activity was taking place in the basement of the museum throughout a month duration of a month throughout a larger exhibition, and it consisted of the reconstruction of one of the major, probably the most important Chalcolithic to Neolithic sites of Cyprus, the site of Chirokitia, a site that really has reshaped our ideas about that particular chronological past of the island. And when we worked with a fantastic team of researchers at the Cyprus Institute again, who specialize in the reconstruction of architectural and archaeological environments through virtual reality and augmented reality. And they produced a 10-minute settlement and its natural environment in a very realistic way, but you were able to enter these huts and observe the distribution of material culture that we know has been excavated in these households, and be able to interact with them in an artifact from a specific place within of these households, and hold it and then place it in the area where it was deposited, it was found during the excavation. There was a particular angle of engagement with that. This is a type of installation that allows people who are wheelchair users and people with mobility issues to interact with these archaeological objects in a virtual way. So when that team developed this project, they didn't just do it obviously to recreate a site in VR, but also to allow a specific group of our community with mobility issues to enter, the realm of this archaeological site. So I want to turn now quickly to some of the other aspects of our public engagement program before bringing this whole thing into conclusion and thinking about how research and public engagement actually strands really interacted. With the project, public engagement and advocacy of the diverse groups that made the Being an Islander community was always at the heart of our practice. Our program rethought the major research themes that transcend the project, insularity, as well as the colonial practice within the discipline of Mediterranean archaeology. And we invested in practice and community co-creation, sensory experience, translating these into dialogue, active representation of individuals and communities, contemporary art projects and filmmaking. Themes of the project was not driven just by the research themes, but it was informed, shaped and debated together with our numerous island communities in Greece, Cyprus and Italy. Through the program, we made the collections, objects and their histories relevant to what matters to all of us today, whether that might be their provenance and the way they were acquired, or the context of their archaeological discovery, as well as their histories as they navigated through different institutions. As a community of researchers and practitioners, we strive for the project to lead to the creation of innovative, immersive and groundbreaking projects and exhibitions, ones that also ask the difficult questions and don't rely on just the curators and researchers to answer them, ones that engage our diverse audiences to their interpretations. In material culture and contemporary material culture, but also queer perspectives in ancient art and material culture and the impact of migration as a global phenomenon. Since 2019, we implemented around 100 public engagement actions, events, art installations, creative commissions, workshops, talks, performances, seminars and community events, nationally and internationally, in addition to learning activities inside and outside the Fitzwilliam Museum. And to give you a flavour of where all this happened, a large proportion of this happened in Cambridge. And the Fitzwilliam Museum, but they also happened in London, in the United States, in Sardinia, in Crete, in Cyprus, in Sifnos, and throughout 2 weeks in November 2023 in Australia, where also large diasporic communities are. So it really had a very wide spreading interaction, and this was down to all the communities that were collaborating with us. Of course, the core team of this project were 7 people throughout the whole duration, and this would not have been possible. Schools and children aged between 4 and 18 years old, and an extensive program with the vision impaired and deaf children group in Cambridge here. This program entailed the group visits of vision impaired and deaf children in collaboration with the Cambridgeshire County Council sensory support units. The children enjoyed exploring the Islanders exhibition, made use of their related handling objects, and took part in creative activities inspired by the objects they discovered. We also worked with animators to create a short animation of a Greek myth. Which centered around the journey by sea, and together with their teachers, they signed the story in British Sign Language, used to create an animation for primary schools studying ancient Greece as part of the National Curriculum of History. Our evaluation for the project now enables our learning team to improve their practice in working with the audience groups, and we plan to disseminate the findings of this wider museum to the wider museum learning sector. New finds related with the archaeological excavations that were happening throughout the 3 large islands in the 3 years of the duration of the project, and we hosted many of these researchers in Cambridge. The documentary, as I mentioned, was done in a different way because it included the collaboration and the active representation of the communities of Sifnos. We worked on Sifnos for different reasons than the 3 large Mediterranean islands that were part of our other research area. Medium or small-sized island which will give us excellent case studies of diachronicity. So we wanted to look at communities and their mobility and connectivity in the ancient world. We wanted to look at the relationship between communities and the resources. Ancient silver mines existed, and they provided a number of ancient communities with silver in antiquity, but also it was the place of a very important centuries-long production of pottery, particularly specializing in utilitarian pottery and in fact cooking vessels. In the post-Byzantine times, for almost 600 years, Sifnos becomes the lieu of production of cooking pots, and becomes a really important place for the dissemination of these artifacts, and up to the point where Greece is actually established as a new independent country with Athens a new capital. Sifnos provides the growing capital with their cooking vessels. The area where I come from, Marousi in Athens, hosted one of these migrant communities of Sifnian potters. A very important community. Craft in a way died down. So it was a really interesting case study between craft production of the ancient times and of the modern early state times. And there were three ideas that transcend the time, but also immaterial culture, because we thought from the beginning one thing that is really missing when people walk into permanent collections of Mediterranean islands and Mediterranean regions is that we only see what is materially preserved, so objects in pottery, in metal, in glass, in other forms, but really a very important part of what shapes the identity of these islands. And again, one could think that for the case of Ireland is immaterial culture. And it is a big challenge and debate that museums are only starting to think about now in the past 20 years on how we actually work on representing immaterial culture alongside material evidence. This is our team, exhausted. 2022 and November, we spent 3.5 weeks in this island in Sifnos, and Sifnos is very well known as a very touristic island during the summer. It is a completely different reality in the winter, and that was really important for us to experience when going there as a team of film producers and researchers. To realize that there isn't a single restaurant that is open in the island beyond the end of October. So the reality that people face in the summer, it is a fake one, and it was a very good opportunity for us, to experience what an island of the Mediterranean, a small island, actually really looks like and behaves like during the winter months. This is some of the awards that were won by the project, and it's really down to the community involvement and the support of the communities. Now, very quickly, I spoke about the contemporary art project. We were particularly struck by a group of commissions from artists to come and explore themes around the project that also have relevance to contemporary art and performance. And one of these groups came to us and said, we really want to work on the idea, they started with talking to us about how they're all under 40 years old, artists that were born in places like Cyprus, Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria. And they said that a lot of them came in to the UK, the United Kingdom, as as a migrant, the UK, the United Kingdom as migrant children and migrant families. A lot of them came as actually undocumented migrants quite recently, and they wanted to explore how aspects of colonization and division and challenges and wars in their land had influenced their own perception of identity as people. And the subgroup of that also wanted to work on perceptions of queer identity in these lands. An argument which I think was very important, that because of the emphasis on what happens in the political and historical circumstances of their countries, issues of queer identity and queer rights are often overlooked. So they did a number of very interesting projects. One of them was a series of little performances that happened in the museum space, in the Fitzwilliam Museum, and it took some arguing from us, from the project team, for other people in the museum to accept this, but we got there, and I thought it was really important that we performed these poetry readings and movements and dance in the places that house the ancient Near Eastern art and Cypriot art and North African art of the museum. Before we did that, we brought a wide selection of objects from all of these geographical places, and I think this is one area that also museums and archaeologists should work more on allowing more sensorial and sensory aspects of interaction between the collections that we hold and the people who actually want to work with them. This is part of the performance that was happening in the staircase of the museum. The staircase, you can't see it, but right and left is where all the Assyrian reliefs are basically being housed, and they're not I wouldn't say really displayed there, because these are reliefs that came very early in the history of the museum, and they were actually used there as decorative pieces into what is a Victorian colonial building. And the queer artists who came to work on that, they really picked up on that. Why are these objects there, adorning the walls, and they don't talk about the heritage? And I think it was a beautiful interaction, and the pieces they produced with that. The project overall took the form, it was called Dust or Butterflies, and it was several awards through the Arts Council, and it's now being presented in 2 galleries of contemporary art in London, as well as a mini exhibition in the island of Chios last summer. So I wanted to give you a flavor of all this, and I'm sorry that it's a little bit haphazardous between research, public engagement, community work, and other areas of activity. But I really hope that these examples and actions have given you an idea of how our research and engagement strategy was developed across the last 4 years of the project. Based on island cultures, we investigated across the Mediterranean their landscapes, material and immaterial heritage, and their social phenomena in the longue durée. And I hope that it has become apparent that what drives the engagement actions of this project is community. All our major research themes were rethought and reshaped throughout the course of the project, so it wasn't the strict script in which we hold on from the beginning. We actually changed majorly the ideas that we wanted to present as part of that throughout the Pronthal and Vilsoli Herenico, who saw the island cultures investigating social phenomena in the longue durée and emphasized that islanders' cultural identities are always in a state of becoming, a journey in which we never arrive, and that cultural identity is a process, not a product. Throughout the examples of this project, we believe we offered a perspective on history that extends deep into the past, focusing on the long-standing and slowly changing relationships between people and the world of the Mediterranean islands and their surrounding continents. What we aim to suggest is that exhibitions and museums found in continents. What we aim to suggest is that exhibitions and museum projects can include this discourse. This is an exciting time for museums and cultural institutions, as well as for universities, and indeed also a time for great change and reappraisal of our goals and ambitions. The role of cultural heritage collections and ambitions. The role of cultural heritage collections in promoting social cohesion and a sense of belonging is very important and should be fostered. Designing projects, exhibitions, and displays in a way that integrates community input, engagement, and on many occasions co-creation and